This is Akashvani. In the program Insights, now we bring a discussion on National Green Hydrogen Mission. The participants are Anil Rajdan, energy expert and former Secretary, Ministry of Power, and V. Ravikumar, Akashvani correspondent.
Hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe. It has been hailed as the fuel of the future that could help end the world's reliance on fossil fuels and aid the smooth transition to net zero emissions. The Union Cabinet, chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, approved the National Green Hydrogen Mission. The initial outlay for the mission will be 19,744 crore rupees, including an outlay of 17,490 crore rupees for the SITE program, 1,466 crore rupees for pilot projects, 400 crore rupees for research and development, and 388 crore rupees towards other mission components. Mr. Razdan, what is green hydrogen? How is it different from, say, grey or blue hydrogen? And what is the significance of the step taken by the government?
See, hydrogen, Ravi, has been the kind of holy grail for fuel for, I would say, since about 1992 when I first read about it and tried to study more on it in 1994-95 while I was doing a fellowship at Oxford. But that was its primitive stage. And yes, it is an extremely powerful fuel. It's an element that is abundantly available in nature and has tremendous energy capabilities. Keeping that in mind, when we want to move towards reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, as you mentioned, there are various shades of hydrogen depending on from what source, whether you want to get from natural gas or from methane, coal route, or say straight the cleanest hydrogen, it's called green hydrogen, is sourced from renewable power and generally through electrolysis of water.
Right.
Now, when you are deriving hydrogen out of this renewable sources of energy, they said like solar, wind, maybe hydro, all these are the green sources. So we call it green hydrogen, and that is the ultimate aim of an energy producer or consumer. If we want to keep up our commitment to making this planet livable for future generations.
Right. And the significance of the step taken by the government, the National Green Hydrogen Mission, how do you see this?
I think it's an absolutely a step in the right direction because India has to not only declare that it is a leader, progressive policies, it is becoming a modern economy, government policies and industrial programs, as well as research and development, must all work in tandem towards attainment of that objective. And I think one sphere in which India has been lacking is that our expenditure on research and development has been very, very low as compared to some of our counterparts around the time we embarked on independence. And I think the key to some of the fastest growing economies has been that the expenditure on research and development has been high in those countries as a proportion to the GDP. In India, unfortunately, research has been confined by and large to governmental institutions, which are not the best institutions for, I should say, commercialization ultimately of the products of research, except I would say probably the sphere of pharma, etc., atomic energy, nuclear power, space. These were very successful government programs. And of course, atomic energy is also a program which is giving you massive energy, and it's a cleaner source of energy, and the greenhouse gas emissions are much lower. But I think the time had come finally to move towards hydrogen, and I think this partnership between government and industry is most appropriate and timely at a time when India is assuming the mantle of G20 leadership. I would say that the key factor would be to somehow invigorate and incentivize the industry to move forward in this direction. Because the kind of investment appetite that new technology has, government budgets may not always be able to provide that. You can provide incentives, you can provide some subsidies, but ultimately, if the horses of research, development, and innovation have to move, I think industry, which is quite mature in India at this stage, has to come forward. And the hunger for expansion, which is there, I think, in private industry, has to be integrated into any new R&D program. And there, I think, is the success, as I mentioned, countries like Japan, US, Germany, Israel, and even China, for that matter, today. it's moving very, very fast. We have to, I think, take industry along, and I'm so glad that something industry has, I think, taken this lead and come forward and said, yes, we will have these programs on our future expansion plans and the futuristic plans. But what we have to keep in mind in India is not importing technology or importing products. We need to create these products ourselves, give employment to our youth, as well as tremendous research opportunities for our highly qualified technical staff. When I was coming out of school, moving into college, the IITs were the dream of many bright students. But unfortunately, most of them migrated abroad in search of the right job opportunities and the challenges. Today, I think India has arrived on the scene to be able to absorb all high knowledge technical people. At the same time, see, when you are developing renewable energy, there is an employment opportunity for even, I would say, tier 2, tier 3 industries, the installation, the upkeep, the manufacture of all these commodities. I think we have to marry the production of renewable energy and the production of green fuels, which this program intends to do. I think is a very laudable objective and something which gladdens my heart, honestly, as a person who spent almost 40 years in the energy sphere, luckily.
Mr. Razdan, the National Solar Mission was launched in 2010, and the initial target there was around 20,000 megawatts, if I remember correctly, and later that was revised to 100 gigawatts, and we've almost got there. Now, when we look at the National Green Hydrogen Mission, the initial targets are 125 gigawatts by 2030. How do you see this mission?
I would say that if the industry is ready, so the reports seem to suggest, then this is the time to take the plunge. Because my little quarrel with the announcement of the renewable energy targets was that we were not talking of indigenous manufacture, but talking of installation. Now, just as we are importing petroleum products, we are creating jobs and money for somebody else across the shores. Similarly, in the wind program, we luckily had a lot of indigenous good manufacture, but it didn't pick up as well. In the solar, we didn't develop that manufacturing capability alongside our plans for expansion. After all, we should not be drawing up such plans for creating employment opportunities for countries outside the shores of India when employment is a huge issue here. And I think talent is available. The institutions which are imparting such skills need to be constantly upgrading themselves to the needs of the new technologies and the need for a new world order. And I only hope that the curricula in the technical institutions, the technical training institutions will all get together with industry to create these hubs as I think being planned. And the success will lie in absorbing this youth talent of India, the technical talent, to the needs of the situation. Luckily, we have the demand, we have the talent.
Right. As the program, the mission also envisages around 6 lakh jobs over the next decade. Moving on to the use cases. One of the obvious use cases of green hydrogen, which is being talked about in the media since this thing was announced, is in the field of transportation, in cars, in buses and trains, even in ships and airplanes. What are the other use cases of hydrogen, or rather green hydrogen in India, whether it is industrial or retail?
You see, I would be looking at opportunities which entail heavy industry. I'd be very interested in steel, other metal industry, which are our guzzlers, to be moving towards manufacture using green hydrogen. I would be looking at heavy transport, trains. I'd read that as a beginning, I think on some heritage routes on the smaller lines like hill station, narrow gauge trains and the likes, there is a plan to introduce hydrogen fuel cell powered trains in these smaller running circuits. Now that kind of thing will ultimately, I think, be of great importance, and maybe hydrogen powered ships in the future. But then you need, also to build a network of transmission of renewable power towards the manufacturing hubs or wherever you can do electrolysis, because the two may not be co-located. The production, for example, in the desert areas of renewable energy, solar particularly, where insolation is high, or in Ladakh or such like situations, we have to build the transmission system also, which can quickly carry the renewable energy across to these manufacturing hubs, because they may not, as I said, always be co-located. But keeping, I think, all these factors in mind, we have to draw up aggressive plans, identify the entrepreneurs who have fire in their belly to take up the challenge and compete with the best in the world. I think that's what governments are meant to do and policy planners are meant to do.
Right. Another thing, you talked about indigenization and the need to get this more indigenous and to also invigorate the private industry in India. Cost of production is a critical factor in determining the success of any alternative fuel. The cost of solar energy in India was very high initially, has declined significantly in recent years. So what is the estimated cost of producing hydrogen, rather green hydrogen, and how does it compare with other renewable and non-renewable energy sources?
I would say that, you see, electrolyzers, for example, has been identified as a key component of production of green hydrogen. Now, manufacture of electrolyzers is something that we can do easily. The Scandinavian countries were one of the first to talk of green hydrogen because they had abundant wind energy. We have abundant solar energy and hopefully wind potential also along the coastal regions can be more finely identified. And I was discussing with a very senior energy friend of mine that we need to find out what we can do, how we can innovate. That's the challenge for us. Get into the act of producing clean energy, utilizing it in the right direction. And all in all, I think it's a challenge that I'm glad the Prime Minister has laid before the country. And it's got to be, the gauntlet has been picked up by industry, by educational institutions, financial institutions also, because you need cheaper credit for it.
Right.
Credit must also go to the galloping industry. And I think a good assessment, along with the risk-taking ability of investing into the future frontiers of technology and energy, would, I think, do a world of good to this country and its aspirations. And I sincerely hope that it happens in our lifetime. We are a federal setup. The states also should come forward. All research institutions, whether under the central government, the state government, or under private industry, have to get into the act together. And I think research and development should not only be looked upon, as unfortunately it has been in some sectors, to get tax benefits. We've got to produce the results. And when I was on the R&D committee of the Indian Oil Corporation post-retirement, I had insisted that R&D should be a profit center of its own. Because unless in a commercial establishment you are generating money, how much money you are generating, it's the sales. They get more respect because they're bringing in the moolah. And if R&D develops a product, they should be given the benefit of showing that this is the amount they've been able to rake in additionally. And that will give them, I think, a greater muscle within the organization and be extremely good for their morale as well as recognition. It is a marriage of research development, industry, and finance that will carry us forward. Nothing else.
Mr. Razdan, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Privileged to be with you on the program.
You were listening to a discussion on National Green Hydrogen Mission. The participants were Anil Rajdan, energy expert and former Secretary, Ministry of Power, and V. Ravi Kumar, Akashvani correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on a mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsdtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.